Hello, everyone, and we are continuing our streak of interviews in MLOps World conference. And this time we have with us Maciej Mazur, who is a principal machine learning engineer at Canonical, the company behind Ubuntu and lots of other open source goodies. And actually, I walked through their booth and saw some amazing stuff when it comes to MLOps and open source MLOps stack, which I believe we'll be able to delve deeper during this interview. So you're principal ML engineer, right? So you're leading project. You're kind of leading maybe programs even.
Yeah, so we have like three main areas that we focus on in Canonical in terms of AI/ML. The first one is obviously Ubuntu itself, right? The operating system that is so popular amongst data scientists, both on prem and on the public cloud. We are trying to make it more and more efficient in terms of resource utilization, because whenever you are running any kind of ML processing, you are using huge capacity of either hardware or a cloud infrastructure, right? So thanks to our great collaboration with hardware players like NVIDIA, Dell, HP, Lenovo, like a lot of other players there in that space, we are optimizing the way how these resources are being allocated. So thanks to the fact that Canonical does not only Ubuntu, but also contributes to OpenStack and Kubernetes, we can actually efficiently work through the entire stack. So if you have a GPU and you have mix to slice the GPU into smaller pieces, and have a huge infra, 10,000, 20,000 GPUs. We also have that kind of deployments, where then if you want to distribute and parallelize ML model trainings, there are tons of things that can go wrong, right? The versions of the drivers, CUDA, NVIDIA GPU operator in Kubernetes, all of this needs to be in perfect sync, and every 1 to 5% of optimization in terms of resources is super important. Like that's one main pillar where I'm working with various different teams in Canonical, doing great job on the OS, Kubernetes, and all the other layers. The second area where I'm putting a lot of time is the open source applications that are in that space, because after we got popular in the OS and infra space, we got a lot of people using our stuff coming to us like, hey, we are also doing AI/ML, we want to use open source tools because that's where the innovation is happening. Can you support us on that? So that's why we kickstarted a lot of dedicated engineering teams, like for Kubeflow, for MLflow, and for other like Spark, Kafka, and other projects that are popular in that space. And we are CV patching that, automating, and building the entire orchestration mechanism. That's like the second area. And third, which is the most dear to my heart because I like projects being actually like pulled off in reality, I'm leading a field engineering team, which is basically focused on actual customer work. So whenever someone wants to use open source on big infrastructures in an efficient way, me and my team are coming in and either performing like MLOps workshops where we define architectures and do the design, we do the deployments, and we also help to optimize existing infrastructures for higher efficiency, better performance, lower energy consumption.
Okay, so getting back maybe to the first area that you mentioned, so that would be utilizing infrastructure, right? And you mentioned Kubernetes. So Kubernetes is relatively old already, like new but old. And there are, of course, many contenders that are trying to, I don't know, introduce serverless, etc. So do you believe that Kubernetes will continue to kind of be the platform for machine
I think
learning?
every platform technology that got popular continues for a long time. Like we still have people using mainframes these days. So like counting on like, okay, everyone will go serverless tomorrow, that's not going to happen. We have tons of people on VMs still trying to migrate from legacy VMware deployments into Kubernetes, right? So they are moving to start their journey on containers. So I don't think that Kubernetes is going away anytime soon. And obviously in machine learning space, most of the tooling, yours as well, is utilizing Kubernetes, right? So that's a popular way to share resources amongst multiple people, and it's also fairly efficient. So obviously serverless is really good for inference and for running basically ML models in production, but you can do it on Kubernetes as well. You have projects like Knative that are really good in doing that. You have Kserve that you can serve models with Knative and in a function as a service way. So yeah, I think that there is still a lot to do in terms of the evolution, especially in terms of combining different types of accelerators, because yes, NVIDIA is like the powerhouse of the market, but there are a lot of people due to supply chain issues looking at different directions and trying to have K clusters which have for example, NVIDIA and AMD GPUs with ROCm, or with Intel with an API, or any other setup that is like complexities around that. That's something that is not solved in Kubernetes very well right now. So there is evolution to be there. And yeah, I think that it's not like the serverless will take over in.
Yeah. So did I understand correctly that you were talking about a single cluster that could have nodes with different GPUs on them?
Yes, that's also one option, but also multiple clusters, right? Whenever you try to expand your capacity, you don't have enough hardware. The typical way how people do it is they have on-prem case cluster with their GPUs and everything there. If they want to have additional 2 or 3 worker nodes on the public cloud, they still deploy the same Kubernetes there, connect them as workers, but then they might have different hardware because of availability or...
Okay. And what are the main challenges of like managing fleets of GPU-enabled nodes?
Yeah, so I think that the main challenge is actually defining who can access them and when, because we end up going into various different environments. We've been into a Fortune 500 company where on a big corridor that has all the data scientists in the building, there is a big board where you write with whiteboard markers, right? And on that board, they have all the GPUs and clusters written down. And every morning they come with the sticky notes with names of their teams and put it in there. That's not the most efficient way of sharing GPUs amongst the teams, but that's something that is still happening and in like big environments. So from there into properly scheduling resources, there is a clear way to go. And even that in Kubernetes, the default scheduler is not that great with working with GPUs. So we typically use things like Volcano, for example, that allows you to have some like priorities and also proper attachment of GPU slices. There are also other projects on the market like Run AI doing that, right? So that these kind of things are super important, and that's the biggest difficulty. Like how to say that there is team A and team B, they have 60-40 split on the GPU estate, but whenever there is the 60% is not utilized, why not schedule some pods there and so on?
And do you have anything from Canonical coming out from Canonical that would be helping this?
Yeah, so we have 2 distributions of Kubernetes. There's Charmed Kubernetes, which is basically automated with the same technology that we automate Kubeflow and all the other tools with. It's very flexible, and you can configure like which CNI and CSI you want to have and so on. And another distribution there is Microkates, which is basically an opinionated version of that. So less choices, but it works out of the box and super easy to deploy. And that's what I see being used most in ML spaces, because people don't really want to worry about which CNI to use. They want a Kubernetes that runs and focus on ML. So, and that already has embedded all the efforts that we are doing with both NVIDIA and GPU slicing and scheduling and everything that is necessary to run efficient ML infrastructure.
But what was it? Okay, maybe I'm a little bit, my knowledge maybe is a little bit rusty, but I thought that Microkate is about running smaller clusters.
Well, not really. That's like a
Misconception.
my marketing team will hate me right now, but I think it's a failure in naming, because Microkate sounds like this is a Kubernetes that you would run on a Raspberry Pi, but
Yes,
we
exactly.
actually have huge GPU-based clusters doing almost HPC kind of workloads on that. And Micro was coming from this like small amount of configurations and an opinionated distribution, not the fact that it runs on a Raspberry Pi.
Yeah, so basically easier to deploy.
Yes.
Or spin it.
Yeah, that's not the best naming, but we don't want to really change it right now.
Okay, so what about MLOps specific things? Like I saw this huge graph of open source tooling, including Kubeflow, which I'm super, by the way, keen about. Like I looked into Kubeflow around, first time I looked into it was around 4 or 5 even years ago. And it was, at that time it was thriving, it was really popular. It seemed like it would become maybe the main machine learning platform if you're doing open source. And then at one point in time, it almost died out because I think it was split between all the components were split, and the maintenance was also split, and it became kind of a combination of different GitHub repositories that would be very hard to find, right? But I saw that you're probably solving the problem.
Yeah, so we saw, from our perspective, Kubeflow was great in terms of open source MLOps, and we didn't want it to die. So basically, we invested heavily. We have a dedicated engineering team. a lot of amazing people all across the world, and big shout out to the job that they are doing, because they basically revived the project. They are contributing to the upstream and also building an automation that allows you to actually confidently use Kubeflow in production. So they created a charmed Kubeflow distribution where you can not only deploy but do day 1 and day 2 operations. They are fixing CVEs, making it ready for governmental deployments, air-gapped environments, and like really moving it more to the enterprise route. And Kubeflow itself as a project, I think it started growing, like 1.8, which is coming in 2 or 3 weeks. It has like amazing progress from the previous version. So I think that this will be like a de facto standard tool chain if you go open source with pipelines, especially that even though Google abandoned Kubeflow because they have Vertex, they are still utilizing Kubeflow pipelines in Vertex and contributing there. So and the community started growing. I think that this is like, we see a lot of production deployments and we see a lot of big companies investing into Kubeflow. So I think it will be it's on a growing track right now, and I'm super happy.
That's really cool. I saw that it's very easy to configure the installment before, because previously you wouldn't do it with Helm charts, right? It was
yeah, it was like with Manifest and like a legacy way how to deploy Kubeflow was super difficult,
yes,
I know,
exactly.
and especially connecting it with other tools, because what people love about like Ubuntu is that you do apt install one app and another app, and they work together. You don't need to worry about anything. You can install 10 applications on Ubuntu and they don't interfere, no problems. You can still log into all of them. We want the same experience for the Kubernetes world, and that's why we do charm distributions of different types of software. It's not only Kubeflow, we do it for other tools like Spark, Postgres, OpenSearch for a vector database in LLMs and that kind of stuff. And with that automation, this all is not only deployed on the same Kubernetes cluster, but also all the stuff that needs to happen in the background, like opening network connectivity, opening ports or firewall rules, exchanging users so that you have uniform identity management or any kind of logging and monitoring. All of this happens behind the scenes. So just like you do apt install Vim, you can do Juju deploy Kubeflow or Juju deploy Postgres, and everything happens there. So it's super convenient to use, and that's the main goal that we have behind.
Mm-hmm. I know that you can integrate different tools with Kubeflow itself. Like I can extend the UI.
Yeah.
Right? Does it happen underneath, or is it a separate deployment?
No. It happens underneath. So you can do Juju deploy Kubeflow and MLflow, for example. And there is a concept in the automation called relations. So then if you run the third command, Juju relate Kubeflow to MLflow, everything will happen in the background. In the Kubeflow UI, for example, when you create a notebook, you will see a checkbox like log into MLflow, and all your experiments are then auto-logged into MLflow.
But is MLflow becoming part of Kubeflow's UI, like a separate tab?
Yeah, when you click to the link, it will open you another tab with MLflow. So it's part of the UI and the same experience.
But it's a separate tab.
Yeah, separate browser tab. You can open it in the same tab, but it doesn't really make a lot of sense, right?
That's true. I saw some companies doing it, like embedding their offerings into Kubeflow.
No, we don't want to do that, because that would, like, according to our philosophy, just like with any kind of Linux operating system, it's like small dedicated tools that does the job well, and you can pipeline between them. Like when you do less and grep, right? The simple example. So the same thing we want to achieve here. So we don't want to force people to, use these tools for that. So you can choose which ones you install, and you have a nice way how to pass data and context between those tools, but we don't want to tell you that, hey, this is the stack that you have to use.
It's super cool to hear that you're kind of moving the same philosophy that Ubuntu is about to other even ML tools, right? So what's the future of open source and MLOps and maybe large language model? Because I don't know, we didn't touch upon it. I didn't really see it on the chart that you have in your booth. Anything Gen AI related and open source?
Yeah, so basically what we are doing in context of Gen AI is providing the tooling that you need to build pipelines like that. If you want to do RAG, for example, you need a vector database, so you have an OpenSearch and easy way to install it, right? And the same goes for any other tools necessary in the workflow, like, I don't know, LangChain, Streamlit, that needs to be CVE patched, that needs to be maintained, and that's something that we do. But from my perspective, open source in terms of like tools and software, like we do in Canonical, is one area. But what's super important in evolution of LLMs is also open source models and data sets.
Yep.
And I think that this will be the future of LLMs. I don't think that we will have like proprietary foundational models. I think that all the foundational models, there will be a small amount of them, maybe 3 or 4 that are popular. Then you will have a lot of models that are fine-tuned based on that, which are specific to a use case, like financial or healthcare or something like that. And then you will get into proprietary space where people will start building products and APIs based on those fine-tuned models, which use your proprietary way of p-tuning, prompt engineering, and all the lot of tricks that people do in the background to make it more efficient, have better context, use RAG, use EDD, and that kind of thing.
Okay. So what's the future for your current projects? You have already a kind of this Kubernetes distribution of all of these open source tools that are easy to install. Do you see some kind of vision for it for the next 1 to 2 years?
So I think that the most important thing that we are focused on right now is to quickly adopt the tools that are gaining popularity, because the whole space is very fast moving forward, especially with Gen AI, because we are now focused on LLMs, but behind the corner, multimodal models, a lot of work around that. This will require new tools, especially in terms of handling images and handling sound and video. So that kind of tooling, we want to obviously have the same automation and the same level of integration so that people can use them. So I think that for next 1 or 2 years, we will actually be sitting in the trenches and adding more pieces to a puzzle so that guys like you can build amazing products out of that.
And you mentioned that you have a team behind each of the tools, right?
Yes. So there is a dedicated engineering team for Charm Spark, for Kafka, for Kubeflow, for MLflow, and so on.
Just to think about this, so they are working full time, right?
Yes.
So just to think scale, so how many people do you need to basically maintain or create a chart for, let's say, Kubeflow?
So the Kubeflow team is currently 7 people, but they're really strong engineers. I mean, all of them I would put like in the top world scale of engineering. And what they are doing, they are maintaining the project itself, so actually fixing CVEs upstream, because we get a lot of adversarial attacks against ML because it's popular. So a lot of their work is focused there on making this secure and building automation. But the Kubeflow community itself is much bigger because there are tons of people contributing features and additional stuff. So the team in Canonical is mostly focused on automation, ease of installation, and upgrades and CVE patching. And that's 7 people.
Yeah, but it's still super amazing to know that now there are people behind it and no one will let it.
Yes, you will not be left alone if you use these tools.
So yeah, we are running, I think, out of time. Maybe you have some thoughts that you want to leave our listeners with, and how do we find you? How do we install your projects? Yeah,
I mean, the easiest way to start with that is to go to charmkubeflow.io, and on that website you can find a lot of tutorials and things on how to start. On my GitHub or my LinkedIn, you can always find a lot of tutorials and Medium articles. We have a podcast running called Ubuntu AI, so if you want to get some like good free education, that's there. And I'm happy to talk with everyone using open source in their products, because we want to get feedback from you guys and know how to evolve better what we build.